Hey there, guys. So I'm going to post these notes from chapters 22 to 24, but I'm also going to include chapter 21 just because it was the final pages we kind of looked at, and, well, it's pretty emotional. I get pretty teary-eyed every time that we watch the scene on film, as well as when I read it. This is the scene where we see just how far the racism and ignorance goes in this town. Atticus is constantly talking about his faith and the people, and that, they will be able to do what is right for Tom Robinson. But we see, of course, as do the kids, Scout, Jem, and Dill, that his faith is misplaced, and the jury has given in to the biases of the time and found an innocent man guilty. We see the courtroom clear out, but the black population of Macomb remains standing in the balcony waiting for Atticus to leave. And Reverend Sykes actually tells Scout, Scout, stand up, your father's passing. Because the black community recognizes all of the effort that Atticus has put in for Tom Robinson and for them, really. Tom represents the entire black community at this point in the novel. Remember, Atticus did say in part 1 when Scout asks him, "Oh, are you going to win your trial?" He says no. Atticus knows on some level that he will not win, but perhaps he sees the potential for change. If you remember back to chapter 15, that mob that comes to the jail to potentially lynch Tom, but Scout recognizes Mr. Cunningham and ends up kind of changing them. Perhaps there's where Atticus sees some potential, but unfortunately it does not work. But Atticus also is trying to teach his kids that no matter what, even if you know you're going to lose, you still fight for what is right. So now let's get into chapters 22, 23, and 24. So chapter 22, we see the black community reacting. They show Atticus respect by standing as he leaves the courtroom, and they also show their appreciation by sending him and his family food. Since they don't have money, food and crops are really the only way they can possibly repay him. When Miss Maudie says, in times of difficulty, and I'm paraphrasing here, in times of difficulty, we have men like Atticus who go to bat for us. She means that it's rare that we are called on to face hardship and face difficulty and stand up for what is right. But in times like that, we have people like Atticus who will stand up and do what is right. And make that tough decision to defend Tom Robinson and do that hard work. It's interesting because here we all are in a very difficult time and that we're all facing and having to make tough decisions, whether it means, not getting to see friends or family or having to stay inside. We are actually in a situation that Miss Maudie's talking about that's kind of like that. Now, finally, at the end of the chapter, we hear about Bob Ewell spitting in Atticus's face. I mean, really hawking a loogie and spitting it right at him. And tells him that he'll get back at him even if it takes the rest of his life. Hello, foreshadowing. So now, of course, we think, well, Atticus should just, punch Bob Ewell. What's he doing? And even Jem can't believe that Atticus wouldn't do anything, but Atticus asks Jem to put himself in Bob Ewell's shoes because he realizes that, Bob was just trying to save face. Bob is not actually a threat. He's all talk. And that if him spitting in Atticus's face means that Mayella has one less beating, well, then Atticus is willing to take it. And according to Atticus, the jury took a white man's word over a black man's word, not because there were not enough people on the jury willing to consider that Tom really was innocent, and so they gave in to ignorance and racism. We do hear that there was a member of the Cunningham family on the jury, and that individual was the one that kept the jury out for so long because they refused to give in to the guilty verdict, but eventually they are overpowered. And Atticus does say that when a man is on a jury, he has to stand up and make a decision about what he believes, and that these men gave in to the racist belief of the time instead of recognizing the facts of the case. All of us at one point in our life will be asked to serve on a jury, and that does really mean you have to really stand in your truth and stand up for what you believe to be the truth and to be what's right. And that is, of course, not always easy. And then chapter 24. A big chapter, a rather long chapter, but a lot happens. Aunt Alexandra has people over to the house for a missionary circle. Basically, women would come over and have tea and chat and try to talk about raising money for missionaries in other countries. Scout, of course, hates it because she has to wear a dress and she has to act like a lady. But during the gathering, about halfway through, Atticus comes in and tells the women, at least his women, Calpurnia, Scout, Miss Maudie, and Aunt Alexandra, that Tom was shot to death when he tried to climb over the fence of his prison. We hear that he just started running and tried to climb the fence, and if he had had 2 good arms, he would have made it. But because he only has the one, he ends up being shot 17 times in the back, which is something we'll talk about later. But the women have to put on a brave face, and they have to pretend nothing's wrong in front of the ladies and keep going on with the missionary circle luncheon. And Scout sees for the first time that there is strength in being a lady, that it sometimes means hiding your pain so that you can help others. And this is the first time we really see Scout recognize the strength of being a lady, of being a woman. Now, at the end of chapter 25, so I only asked you to look at the very end of it, Bob Ewell allegedly says, after Tom's death, 1 down, 2 more to go. So the question is, who will those other 2 be? I guess we'll have to find out.